Have you ever had an idea for a physical product that you just knew had the potential to change the world? Maybe it was something you dreamt up in your garage or a solution to a problem you encountered in your daily life. Whatever it was, you knew it was a winner. If only you can turn that idea into something. You are not alone. Countless entrepreneurs and innovators have stood exactly where you stand, filled with passion and drive, but unsure of where to begin. And that's where the Builder Circle comes in.
My name is Seda Ejman, and I'm a mechanical engineer, hardware enthusiast, and hardware mentor. I've had the privilege of working with numerous hardware companies that are passionate about solving some of the biggest challenges in the world. And I will be your host as we explore the exciting and complex world of physical product development.
I'm very excited to announce that this episode is sponsored by Onshape, the only cloud-native product development platform. Onshape combines professional-grade CAD with built-in PDM and real-time collaboration tools all in one system with no downloads required. Through the Onshape Startup Program, eligible hardware startups receive free access to Onshape Professional for 1 year, including integrated CAM. Apply now at onshape.pro/thebuildercircle. You can also find this link in the show notes. As always, the TLDL, aka Too Long Didn't Listen segment, hardware tools, strategic frameworks, and tips will now be available on Substack. This is a space that we are building, so we appreciate your patience, but we will have a lot of great resources up on there, so make sure to follow. Welcome to the Builder Circle. My name is Seda Ejman, and I'm here with the wonderful Jon Hirschtick. I'm so incredibly excited to be talking about software for hardware with you. Jon is the former founder and CEO of SolidWorks and Onshape. He's still the chief evangelist of Onshape, and he's had an incredible track record of building companies, raising hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's a valuable board member to many startups in the ecosystem. He also holds a bachelor's and master's from MIT in mechanical engineering and was a part of the Blackjack team that led to Breaking Vegas in 21 and used the resources of that to be able to build SolidWorks. Just overall incredible. Jon interviewed me last year for his Masters of Engineering podcast, which was wonderful. I had the opportunity to give a talk at Onshape, and we know each other from Baukunst. So it's just absolutely phenomenal to be here. And with that, we can get started.
Well, Seda, thanks for inviting me and for your kind words, but right back at you, because you have made a real impact on not only the companies that you work with and the products they build, but I think our community. And this is an example of that, where you're not just working with, one or two or three companies at a time, or maybe 10 at a time, or whatever, but you're doing things to get the word out. And basically, we're both have in common, we're trying to help people build better hardware products, right? It's a, little loose mission statement we share.
Absolutely.
In very different ways.
Yes, true.
Which is what we'll talk about.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you. That obviously means so much coming from you. You're one of my heroes, obviously, as a mechanical engineer myself that's worked on all of the platforms you've created. I don't think it's far-reaching to say thank you. Just really thank you for all you've done and all you've created for us.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm still at it, still trying to make them better and better every day, every week. That's what I'm up to.
Absolutely. And okay, so let's get started with the basics. There's a lot of people that are working on software solutions for hardware companies, and right now the engineering workflow has really been embedded in the software world because it has to be. It's a better way to do it. So when you were first starting on, how did you convince yourself, and I guess how should others, that software is the right solution for a hardware team's problem?
So I think that, first of all, I'll make a friendly amendment. Software is not the right solution. It's a right solution. It's one of many tools you use to help build new products. And I guess the first thing is just on the question of software being a tool. That's proven now. Like, I didn't have to invent that concept. Software was being used. CAD software was widely adopted before I started SolidWorks. There was a lot of CAD being used, and there was very little. I suppose there was lingering people who were like, oh, I work faster on the board, and I learned on pencil and paper almost 50 years ago. And so there's still some of that, but for the most part, when I started SolidWorks, and certainly by the time of Onshape, after SolidWorks, it was pretty accepted that software, in particular CAD and PDM software, were useful tools. Okay, but the other thing that I was convinced of and had seen, that there was new generations coming along. Just when you thought the world had stabilized, something new would come along, and you'd say, wait a minute, and these new tools brought greater and greater value, whether it was, AutoCAD, and people said, CAD on PC, wow. And then Pro Engineer, PTC, where I am now in the 80s and 90s, today Creo,
Right.
that product was a landmark breakthrough product.
Totally.
And then SolidWorks, thank you, and now Onshape. These are all bringing new tech. So it was proven already to me, I didn't have a leap of faith, that software was valuable, a tool, not the solution, but a solution, and that new generations could improve the value that product developers got. So I just came along and continued that story into new generations.
Totally. Well, I guess the one thing that I see a lot of software companies struggle with, specifically in the hardware space, is kind of breaking into and earning the right to be a part of the engineering workflow.
Absolutely.
And so I guess, how were you able to go about that?
So well said, earning the right to be in the engineering workflow. So I would say, again, for the tools I chose to build, and by the way, you introduced me, it's correct, I did found SolidWorks and Onshape. I also found another company before SolidWorks called Premise, and we didn't earn that right to get in the engineering workshop. So I built tools, and we built things at SolidWorks in particular. We built some modules and products that did not succeed, that you don't even hear about. So I think we were proven by building a whole CAD system like SolidWorks and Onshape, and the PDM we built in Onshape, we were proven that we would get a seat at the table with the engineer. We would earn that right if we function at a high enough level to be valuable. These weren't speculative technologies.
Right.
Other people had to earn that right through speculative. Like, there was a time when CAD was a speculative technology, but by the time my stories unfolded, it was no longer speculative. The question really was more around two things. Could we build another CAD system?
Right.
That was kind of viewed as a crazy idea when founding SolidWorks and founding Onshape. And could it work on a Windows PC? Could it work in the cloud? And many people told me both times, no, it's never going to work, John. There's all these reasons, performance, all this other stuff. And both times, of course, it works.
Yeah.
And so the large effort to build it, and then will the market appreciate will there be real differences of meaning, and will the market come to appreciate them? Those are the risks I undertook, not really the risk. Other companies, though, your question was about others too, right? And today, you're seeing more entrepreneurship in the software tool space than ever. AI is driving a lot of it. And many times people are trying to create new tools, and there's that question of, will engineers adopt it? And that is a big question.
Huge question.
Huge question for new products, new offerings. Even some of the new modules we work on, like for instance, I think we announced today that we're adding a model-based definition, MBD, to Onshape. That's used in a certain part of the industry, but we're really hoping it's going to get used a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But that's still, MBD is something that hasn't really earned that seat earned that spot in the engineer's work life daily. Hopefully we'll earn it. Yeah.
Well, okay, so you mentioned a few things, and I'm going to tap into those and questions that I ask a little bit later. But you mentioned that you founded a company prior to SolidWorks, and you were saying that it didn't earn that right in the workflow. I guess one question that I'm very curious is, when did you make the call that it was time to potentially call it quits? And what happened? How did it not find its way in?
Well, we ended up selling the company to Computer Vision, that first company. And I would say that, we just didn't sell as much of it, and also users didn't use it as much as we would have liked.
Okay.
And we felt that by being acquired, that would offer us a better place to get value out of what we were doing. And I think that happened to a degree, but that category of product never really took off.
I see. And what, in your mind, what was different about SolidWorks? Because I feel like people, when they have that initial didn't go as planned, they could kind of discount themselves or not feel like they can do another thing.
It can shake your confidence.
Right.
And I know you're going to ask me about blackjack later. We'll return to that.
Yeah.
Probably I could go, but blackjack had given me some insight into the idea that you can be playing right and still lose. You know, I've probably lost more blackjack hands in my career than I've won, but happen to have more money bet as I won. Who knew? Even when everyone tells you you can't do something, you still can't do it. So with SolidWorks, we really knew that the market was there for 3D CAD. There was no question. I mean, Pro Engineer was selling like crazy, and there was a lot of interest. You really didn't have, the hard part, again, I'll come back to, was could you just build another new CAD system is a ton of work. You know, it's like saying build another new car or something. You know, it's a crazy idea. And then could you build it in the way that we built it, which had never been done before on the Windows PC, although we didn't realize it, but there were other teams working on it, like, you know, Solid Edge was working on the same thing at the same time, and we didn't even know that until well into the process. And then could you bring it to market, but particularly would the differences be meaningful enough that people would say, oh, that brand's better, you know, and it turned out it was. And I think the basis that gave me the confidence of it, which I think was the question, right, was my grounding in customers. Like if you trace it back to where was the foundation, where was the pillars dug into the rock of my confidence, it was my interactions with customers and users, which I share in common with our audience, our common audience, the hardware product builders of the world, which is you've got to understand customer needs. I was trained in design and mechanical engineering, and I would visit a lot of customers, and that was what gave me the confidence that, hey, if we made a system that ran on a Windows computer or with Onshape, that ran in the cloud, let's talk about Onshape a little bit, that had collaboration capabilities like Google Docs, that had PDM like GitHub with branching and merging, that this would matter to product developers. I knew that because of the customers that I visited and saw and heard what they told me and watched them wrestle with the problem. That was the grounding that got me through it. That's what gave me the confidence.
That makes a ton of sense. And it's interesting because one of the questions that I was going to ask you, and you basically answered it, was just there's a lot of people that have software backgrounds that want to create these tools for hardware engineers. And then there's a lot of hardware engineers that are very familiar with what they're building and the process of building and the pain points of their team, but they don't have this software. Basically, they don't have the software chops to be able to do this. And I think what you are talking about and what we know about you is that you were in this very unique position where you knew at the pain points and you knew what questions to ask most lightly. And then also, it's sometimes tricky, I feel, and I would love to hear your opinions about this, of just like when you go to users, how good they know their problem and how aware they are, because there's almost a second level of just like, they might describe a problem, but might not be the root.
Right. Well, that has to deal with what you're talking about is when customers tell you what they want, but you have to infer what they need.
Exactly.
You know? So, you know, no customer said to me, hey, I want the UI of my CAD to be, I'll mix in SolidWorks and Onshape stories. I'm naturally much more focused on Onshape these days. So I could tell you, but I know you want to hear the whole thing. But like no one said, you know, and by the way, SolidWorks, I have to really test my memory here because I'm going back. I don't know if you know how old it is. You probably
95.
Don't. That's when it launched. So we started working on 93.
Okay.
32 years ago.
It's been a while.
So that's before many of the users were born.
Yeah, true.
You know, and you know, it's old stuff. So I have to test my memory a little, but I'm half joking. But anyway, no user said, oh, we want it to run on a PC and work like Windows. No user said to me, we want it in a browser and with collaboration like Google Docs.
Right.
Said nobody. Mostly users express what they need, what they want, as being in terms of iterations on what's in front of them. You know, so they take their old system, like users told me the pain with SolidWorks of checking in files and locking them. And you know, they're like, hey, can you develop a better scheme for check-in? Or can we copy files to and from the cloud, which, some of my colleagues in the CAD industry think that's a good thing to do, and maybe, but it's not what we do at Onshape.
Right.
We don't have files that get copied. We don't have any locking. We don't have any checkout. We don't even have a save button. So you don't have to worry about autosave. So you don't have to make autosave more reliable. You eliminate the need to save. And so understanding what people need is tricky, but it comes through watching customers. And we could talk about, I just visited a customer yesterday, by the way, someone we both know. I don't know if I should say, but someone we know in the entrepreneurial community, who's a renowned hardware builder. And, and my eyes are open. I'm learning on every visit.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I keep forgetting the questions because I
you actually,
did I answer that? Yeah.
You answered it. We were talking about how aware people are about what their problems are, and it's really important to infer what they actually need.
Actually, the other thing, I think your point was a really good one, which is sometimes people come into the industry of building software for hardware builders, and they know hardware, but they don't know software. They know software and don't know hardware. And what happens is the knowing hardware but not knowing software, that's actually in some ways the easier problem, because you can learn to write software.
Totally. With AI especially now.
Yeah, and I think the common error there is to misunderstand the market size.
Mm-hmm.
Like people come to me like I've been building hardware and I have this problem. I built a software tool to help with it. And I'm like, that's great. And I'm thinking, yeah, people who build, I'm making this up, quadruped robots would find that tool really useful. And they're like, and because CAD is a $10 billion market, I think I'll get to $10 billion a year. I'm like, well, you're not building a CAD system. It's market. It's not understanding markets. It's like building a very narrow tool and trying to use larger, more general tools as a proxy for it. It's like, no, it's like, we see that a lot in life. So that's kind of the problem of hardware engineers, is sometimes overgeneralizing the size of a market. I think if you build a tool that has this, you have to be realistic about matching the business expectations to the size of the market, the real market potential. And sometimes new markets come along. Yeah. Like I see you have the remarkable tablet. Fantastic device, by the way. I own one.
I love it.
And nobody really understood there was a market for that until it existed. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's another thing that happens sometimes, and that could happen, but a lot of times the common error is people say, hey, there's a really big market, when in fact it's a smaller market. Totally. That's the hardware person coming to software. The software person coming to hardware makes the mistake of not understanding what hardware development's about. Yeah. It's like, oh, I built software, I built a mobile app for pizza delivery, and now my friend's friend builds hardware, and I'm like, oh, we can do that, and I wrote a mobile app for managing hardware development. You don't understand it. Or they show you really simple examples, which are worthless in real hardware. Like, hardware is hard. Yeah. So showing me a simple example of something you made at home you just did study in London, there's a phrase, mind the gap. Yeah. Yeah. So I have a presentation where I say, mind the gap between the demo part and the real parts.
Love that.
Like in your
That's awesome.
Yeah, like with your clients, I'm sure they're turning to you not because they're making, a wooden block with 3 holes in it, but they're making something like that remarkable tablet.
Yeah. They want to.
Yeah, they want to, or even the pencil for it, or they're making something like, like a drone, or a medical device. And so the software people who come into our world, they either don't understand it, they underestimate it, or one of the worst diseases is a software developer in our world who, like me, is a sort of amateur mechanical engineer. Like, I studied in college, I've done a little of it, and start to conflate themselves in their home workshop with the pro needs of like your clients and mine.
Gotcha.
And so those are really dangerous, and a lot falls into those two valleys there, right? Sounds like you're nodding.
Absolutely.
That was a long answer, but it's a great question.
No, I think it's a needed answer. And I think the biggest takeaway from that, and I completely agree with everything you said, is that no matter what your background, I think it's really important to approach any type of problem with curiosity and humility and take that forward. Yeah. And I see that in you, even though you've been doing this for so long. Yeah. You have the most humility I've seen in a person that's been doing it. And I think you have also a deep sense of curiosity. And I think that innovation happens when those two lines are drawn together. And so it's just what you said with like people inflating markets or not quite understanding what the problem is and inferring what the need is. It really comes from that lack of curiosity or lack of humility. They're like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. So,
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. I'm honored that you say that. But I still do, like, I know in my team, I talk to our team here on the Onshape team at PTC and at PTC generally. I'm like, hey, we got to get people out to visit more customers, And I try to set an example, like my record in a year is 48 on-site visits.
That's amazing.
On-site. That doesn't include people
Like,
visiting
here
my
or-
office
yeah.
or getting on calls or going to trade shows and events or hardware meetup or places. I'm not including any of that. I just mean 48 times I went to their place where they use our product or a product like ours to do what I consider real representative things. It has to be in their place, using it. And I'll do that 48 times a year. That's an extreme year.
That's
it was really,
quite
it was
a lot.
post-COVID, and I wanted to get back into it. I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to do one a week. And I did 48, because then I got COVID at the end of the year. It's
Oh,
ruined
no.
I had a whole bunch scheduled at the end, and I kind of missed. But 48, and I've done more customer visits than anyone I know. And I do them because I learn every time. Yesterday's visit, I learned things. They bring things up I've never heard before.
Yeah.
And if I can be doing this 44 years and I hear something new, and even with Onshape, I've heard so many things. And yet yesterday, we all looked at each other and said, that's a great point the customer made. And we really should go think about that workflow. And, we're always learning and doing more. And I think we also learn things on visits we can't learn any other way.
I completely agree with
Most valuable questions, ask for a tour, can you show me, tell me more about that. That's how I learn. So.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's the curiosity you have. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank
so
you.
much.
Well, it really is, it's probably something I also learned from our customers, because they're all, like, I'm in this odd meta state of being a product developer who loves product development and loves developing products for other product developers to use to develop products, so it's like this meta view. And so I can learn from them and what they do, and try and apply it to building. In our case, we build only software.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
That's
you can see
awesome.
I still having fun.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. Well, actually, I want to take a slight detour regarding just like understanding users and like what they need and being able to infer what they need.
Yeah.
John McElhaney talked about this story in a Balcones meeting that we went to, and maybe you could tell our listeners about it, which is how the feature tree came about.
The feature tree, yeah, the feature manager. Oh, yeah, I can tell you that.
Such a cool story.
So you're talking about the feature manager, which is now standard on the left side of all CAD systems,
Every
a
single
list
one.
of features. Yeah, they all have it. At the time, nobody had it. So I was out, if I remember correctly, I was visiting a customer with a customer. When I say customer, I don't mean it's necessarily already my customer.
Sure.
I mean, it's
Could be a
potentially a
potential,
customer.
yeah.
I'll visit people who don't use Onshape now, because I don't,
Why not?
as long as they're doing, or don't use any CAD yet, if they're going to, or if they use another product, hey, I can learn from that.
Totally.
So we visited somebody using Pro Engineer, a customer, and it was me, and interesting to you, Scott Harris, co-founder of SolidWorks, one of the co-founders, maybe Bob Zafonte, it's hard to remember, and then also a guy named Steve Krug. Do you know Steve?
I don't know.
Okay, let's put a bookmark on Steve
put a
Krug.
pin
He's
on
a famous guy, and when you hear what he does, you're gonna love it. I recommend him to all your viewers and listeners. But let me tell you about Steve in a moment. So some group of us went to visit a user of Pro Engineer, PTC's product, and it's like, I model, I forget what they model, machinery or something. Can you show me? I just told you the questions I learned to ask when I visit, and I advise any product developer, is questions like, can you tell me more about that? Can you show me? And can I get a tour?
Mhm.
You know, so they said, yeah, we use Pro Engineer model. Oh, can you show me? Sure. Well, it's just a machinery model and Pro. I'd love to see it. Can you show me? Yeah, sure. So he sits down at his computer and opens, and while it's opening, because it takes a while to get the files open, whatever, pulls out a notebook, pulls it out. And I'm like, oh, what's that? Well, this is where I write down my list of features. I go, really? Can you tell me more about that? He goes, oh, well, it's really important when you make your model to know your features, a sketch, a protrusion, as I think Creo calls it. By the way, Creo has gone on to great things, and it's still a fantastic product. So protrusion and Creo, extrusion, and Onshape, whatever. Sketch, extrude, fillet, shell, this stuff, draft, And he wrote it on paper and pencil. I'm like, why do you? Oh, I have to keep track of all the features. It's very important. Didn't say, hey, I'd love to have that up in the software.
Yeah, no,
we went back and we're like, oh, we should put that on the screen. So we got a patent on it. By the way. Yeah, there's a patent for the feature manager, which you can look up in Google.
Wow.
And I know that, I can't remember exactly who's on it. I think it's Steve Krug, Bob Zafonte, me, I can't remember who else. And so that's how it came to be. And we said, we were familiar with like the file manager from Windows. And, it's like, hey, we should put it up there on screen and people can see it. I was like, wow, and it became kind of a standard. And so, can I tell you about Steve?
Yeah, please.
So Steve is an expert on usability, and he wrote a famous book, I hope you've heard of it, called Don't Make Me Think. Have you ever heard of it?
I actually have heard of that.
He's the author, famous person, the guru on website and web app usability, Steve Krug, Don't Make Me Think. Fantastic book for anyone who's building any kind of website or software. And I think for anyone who's building any product that users are going to use.
Nice.
Control panels of machines, hardware, whatever. I think everyone should read it. Great book. He's written another book on UX testing.
Okay.
A Rocket Surgery Made Easy. That's another great one too.
Oh, cool.
Don't Make Me Think, one of my all-time favorite books. It's an easy read. You'll be laughing and you'll learn, which is the best thing a book can do, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really just wanted more people to know that story because when I went to this talk and Jon was speaking, I remember having a notebook and I actually drew the story he was saying because I wanted to visualize like the Post-its and everything. So that's just a personal favorite. So I'm sure it'll be a crowd favorite after.
Yeah, it's thanks. It's fun to relive that.
So we kind of very slightly dipped our toes into this, and I want to drill a bit deeper because this is really user adoption is a huge challenge. I mean, for any type of software developer. And I think it's the majority of the issue that sometimes stems from engineers being a bit stubborn. It keeps going back to workflow, but it just keeps going back to Excel and SolidWorks or just note-taking, manual check-ins, all of that. And I think there's a lot of very incredible software tools that could reduce risk, that could speed up teams, that just kind of are no-brainers, but they still have user adoption problems. So I want to understand what your, 2 cents is on that and how people should think about it.
Okay, so yes, adoption is a big problem, and there's a number of reasons why it's hard. First of all, a lot of technology has these problems. Why are they larger in product development? Because you would agree, right? They tend to be larger adoption, more inertia, the existing system. Well, part of the reason gets back to what I said earlier. Hardware is really hard. So the software is more complicated, more error prone, mistakes are more costly, and people, the other thing is a couple of the discussions tie in here. When we talked about all the software products that are launched without understanding the real user need, that builds a sort of skepticism into the market. Like, hey, I've heard this before, and it turns out the product doesn't do what I need, or and so there's a number of reasons, but it all adds up to the same thing: is people are very reluctant to move. I think the problem is people always clearly see and feel the switching costs and hassles. Like, I don't want to change system. And they exaggerate them. I don't want to change systems. I've known my CAD system since I was in college, and all the people here are trained on it, and it has all the power we need. And Never mind, these are the same users who, when I sold them, say SolidWorks, they were like, well, it doesn't have all the features we need, and we haven't added all those features. They've just changed their perspective. And products get built, so there's always this sort of, well, I'm building my products just fine, but people built products on paper. And the pyramids were built. I'd love to see how, but I don't think we'd want to go back to the way the pyramids were built. Maybe,
Sure.
but I doubt it. I doubt that we'd want to go back there. And I don't hear any more people saying go back to paper. And I don't even hear people today who are skeptics about 3D modeling. So what happens is people exaggerate, they feel and exaggerate the obstacles to moving. And then at the same time, they don't educate themselves on the benefits.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just another piece of software. I know all about what software does, and there might be a little bit of benefit, but what they don't understand is the whole world of benefit. So the real world is the benefits could be here and the costs here, but switching would be really costly and there isn't much benefit.
Yeah.
And how do you know that? Well, I looked at it. I played with it for 5 minutes.
Right.
It's like at the same time they're making products, and if I said to them, well, your product isn't useful, I played with it for 5 minutes. Like a lot of the products that our customers make take thought. They're better pieces of machinery or whatever. So you have to. And the other thing, the third element to making the change is finding the right moment of opportunity, the seam in the workflow. Because even if you understand the benefits and you more correctly understand the costs, okay, and you say, okay, I get it, more benefit than cost, you can't do that in the middle of your, workflow. That like if you're in the last stages of getting a product manufactured,
it's not the right time.
It's not the right time, and I get that, and that's part of what we do on the Onshape team. Is we say to customers, hey, let's pick the right moment or the right project to start to make the transition. The other thing people don't realize is typically the switching costs are one time, but the benefits are recurring.
Sure, yeah.
So you might go through a learning curve of a few weeks or a few months. Oh my gosh, a few months. But if you don't do that, every day for the next 10 years, you're going to be losing time to copying files around and checking in and out stuff and locking and servers crashing. And that stuff ain't getting any better. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
And the benefits of new gen systems. So that's the situation. And that's our daily life.
Yeah.
And
It makes
anyone
sense.
who's selling disruptive technology into an entrenched market, but the rewards are also there, because if you're selling into a market that tends to get entrenched, when you do acquire a new customer, it's worth a lot, because now you're the one who's entrenched. Now you're the one that people say, hey, I'm pretty happy running my business with Onshape now.
Sure.
And it's not like a plot to lock people in. It's just the facts are that typically when people make the move, it's sort of like when you buy a car. Once you buy a new car, you tend to keep it a while. You don't just change it the next day.
Totally.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think I want to drill in a little bit deeper, because I'm just trying to think of the mechanics and like the practical approach that people could take. And one thing that keeps burning a hole in my mind is, how did you get the word out about SolidWorks back then? Because we were pre-bubble, and there wasn't, the internet wasn't.
Well, it didn't exist.
It didn't exist. It was like slightly coming about.
There really was, when we launched SolidWorks, let's just say this, there was no website when we launched SolidWorks.
Yeah.
So there was an internet. And I remember later in the life of SolidWorks, we created a website. It was an item in our board meeting. Should we invest in a website?
Wow.
And, it's like, board item, the way today someone might say, well, should we invest in buying AI tools?
Yeah.
Or something, of course you should. But there was so we launched SolidWorks. Yeah, it was that long ago. There wasn't an internet. Most people didn't have mobile phones. Things were done on paper, but we did marketing of the day. We went to trade shows. We emphasized a lot of driving around and bringing the special computer to do demos.
Okay.
If you want to do a demo, that's how you did it. There was no Zoom.
This is like on a CD.
Yeah, you could send
Scott
someone
Harris
a
actually
video.
showed me the first
the
CD.
first CD.
Yeah, it was like, I have a screenshot of him showing it to me.
Yeah, the CDs.
really cool.
By the way, CDs were cool because they weren't floppy drives. Like,
Yeah,
ooh,
true.
you can
Like,
get,
wow, like
you can get
state of the
whatever
art.
it was. What did you get on a CD? I forgot. On a CD, you got like 400 meg or something like that. If you're like, ooh, and then we had DVDs. Whoa.
Whoa.
And that was like, wow. And so, but we didn't typically, we would drive around. You drive to visit the customer, bring a computer on a little trolley, and set it up, maybe a laptop, but a big laptop.
the
You can
bricks.
always see in the room who uses CAD, excuse me, not Onshape, but if you're using traditional CAD, you can tell by the computer
How
who's
large
the CAD
it is.
user. Either they're gaming or they're CADing.
Yep.
But they don't, the CAD users aren't using the cool MacBook Pros. Onshape users are. Like Onshape users use MacBook Pros all over the place because they're a great computer for Onshape. And
Yeah.
imagine that. So, so we got the word out through trade shows, press. I flew around to meet journalists and have meetings. This is what you did, and
That's
got
great. I mean, the
articles.
adoption is so
You got
large, so
press.
it's crazy
Yeah.
that it was just like a bunch of you guys in a car and on planes.
Yeah, we had dealers around the world.
Right.
And so the dealers were out there, but yeah, that's what you did. I mean, that's what everyone did. We didn't do anything all that different.
I mean, with SolidWorks, there was a huge reseller strategy that you took that I think absolutely
Yeah.
blew it up.
Yeah.
What made you go that route? Was it just no brainer? Like that's just the
I
easiest
think,
way to do it.
well, you have to look at your strategy as a way to get users to success. Like I always view it, people come to me, well, distribution strategy, margins, how much money we're going to make and all. I always start at your user is in a certain state now,
Yeah.
and we're taking them on a journey to a better state. What do they need to get there? Well, of course, they need our products that we're selling, but they need other things. They need training. In the case of back then, training was face-to-face. Sales was face-to-face. They need support. They need hardware. Some of these dealers sold hardware. Setting up the hardware is a big deal, as anyone who's set up CAD and PDM can tell you. Again, I want to be clear, that's in the world of SolidWorks. In the world of Onshape, we've eliminated most of this.
Yeah.
You don't need to futz with the driver and the card and which version of Windows you're on and all that nonsense, excuse me. By the way, the new generation doesn't have any of those skills. So, these companies that keep doing it are going to have to train new workers
To go through that old
this is
antiquated
what
system.
directories are and a network drive and C:// That's
I've been in those trainings
Oh, you've been in those
multiple
trainings?
times.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, back to your question, the dealers were a way to deliver the services around SolidWorks and the hardware setup and maintenance and setting it all up. And they did a great job. They're great people. And, and that was the right thing for getting the kind of customers we were getting, the kind of success we needed. The dealers at that time were a very good match. Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's pretty brilliant how that went about. And I think the strategy that you took was interesting. And I think with Onshape now you're taking an even bolder and cloud-based makes sense with everying that we've been through.
Cloud native makes sense. And with cloud native, it doesn't just introduce powerful new benefits to the customer, but it introduces powerful new ways that we would sell and market it, which are all obvious to the world. Just as I said, it was obvious in the days of SolidWorks to go to trade shows and send out paper mailers and drive to give demos and all that. In the era of Onshape, all this is obvious, like you want to do your training online at your own pace for the most part.
Sure.
You expect an AI tool now to help you learn, and we have that, by the way. Onshape AI Advisor shipping to all users. No one had to upgrade or learn anything. It's just there, and it's pretty good. You can ask it detailed questions about using Onshape, and it gives you very thoughtful answers. You really can feel at times like you're talking to an expert user, which is the whole point. You expect a sales process that might involve for really quick access and provisioning to your team so everyone can be using it. You might have a phone dialogue with the sales rep. Sometimes we fly out and visit. We have some large companies, and so, that's appropriate, just kind of like AWS sells.
Yeah.
You can start easy, you can build up, and AWS has an outstanding team that will fly around and visit and help you when you need that. And it works. And so for us with Onshape, we think we're taking those users on the next stage of their journey in the optimal way with our strategy. And we do use some great partners in different ways in different places too. But it's primarily a digital first experience. which matches what our customer wants
That makes sense.
and what they need.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So you've seen kind of this product market fit journey through SolidWorks in the early stages when there wasn't any internet and you were going like very much everything was like a pretty manual process. And then you see it now with Onshape where it's like you can get data from the internet and you also go and do the kind of manual visits and actually understanding how the user adoption and usage is going. My question to you is, what are your kind of clear success criteria when you launch this? Like, what should these software for hardware companies be looking at to give them like a clear go, no go of, yes, people are using it? Like, what are the metrics, I guess, just to get like pedantic?
And now we're back, to be clear, we're back to companies that build software tools for hardware development. As you said, software for hardware, just to make that clear. By the way, great topic I don't get asked about. Some of these, topics, it's a really great topic. So the thing I would say, the answer is you've got to focus on usage, not necessarily sales, usage.
I agree.
One of my colleagues, co-founder of Onshape and like the first employee at SolidWorks, Dave Corcoran, legendary guy. Love, Dave is responsible for a lot of the great things in both products, Onshape and SolidWorks. Dave says always, usage doesn't lie.
True.
Sales can lie sometimes, because sales, you can sell to people who are like
hype might
sampling behavior, like, oh, that looks cool, I'll buy one and try it. Like I said earlier, I'll try it a little while. And for some people, they don't mind buying things to try it. But usage, ongoing usage, if it's recurring over time, that gives you the signal that you want. So my advice to software for hardware companies would be focus on usage as a metric. I was just talking to someone about this morning. Someone was building software for an industry that builds things. Nothing we're talking about here, by the way. And I said to them, they're trying to decode early, first 100 customer kind of what's going on. And I'm like, what does the usage data tell you? And they gave me some aggregate. I go, no, I want you to break it out. I want to see aged cohorts where you say, hey, here's, all users, no matter when they started with us, normalized to zero, after 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the usage curves and breakdowns. I want to know, what do those cohorts look like? Are they all using it a lot at the beginning and it tails off? Not good.
Yeah.
Does it take a while and then they ramp up? Well, that would give you a different way to interpret. Then if your sales growing, your usage doesn't, just wait a moment and it'll catch up.
It will.
And so you got to kind of understand that. And usually there's cohorts. Like these are the samplers, these are the slow burns, these are the ones who get up. And then sometimes you learn that these software tools can be used very intermittently and still have very happy users. And that can be confusing.
Right, yeah.
To people, because it's like, oh no, this user stopped using it. So you call them, they're like, oh, we love your tool. It's just that this month I'm in China
we're
working with supply chain. By the way, great episode of your podcast about that subject. I really loved it.
With Ying,
Yeah, with the woman from Apple. That was I've heard that topic addressed in other podcasts, but it was really insightful. So I recommend that. But or I'm off doing, we're focused on customer meetings, or we're going to our trade shows, sales needs me, like there's all these reasons people go low, but you have to make sure you understand that. So my advice to them is focus on usage and be really clear-eyed about is your market an actual market or a potential market? And what segment of it does your product address? All of it or just a part of it? And there's no right or wrong answer there. It's just make sure that it's aligned. Like don't have a product that is for a small niche and then sell investors on the big $10 billion, or people like, oh, there's $1 trillion spent on manufacturing every year. And okay, maybe there is, but you're
not gonna get all that ever.
Your tool for optimizing surface finish is not going to get a big share of the $1 trillion, so you have to kind of bring it to more reality.
It's that Tam Sam Sam, classical VC deck, I think, that causes that.
The classic VC deck, the pitch decks and things.
The pitch deck.
But that's it, usage.
Yeah.
Usage doesn't lie, focus on usage.
I completely agree with that. And I actually wanted to ask a specific question because when you were talking about usage, that made me think, well, like there are a lot of engineers that might be huge proponents of your software or your product in general, but they're not the decision makers sometimes.
Yes,
And
that's a big issue.
That's a tricky one. So I guess like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? And then also it's like even going one meta step behind that, how do you determine who the decision maker is?
These are great topics, and I'll talk about this all day. So you said that sometimes you have enthusiasts. So remember, before I told you that some of the problems we have in software for hardware people are the same as all software.
Yeah.
But they're harder because of things we do. Well, in this case, there's good news here relative to other software, because sometimes you think of CAD and PDM as enterprise software, and it can be thought of that way. Mm-hmm. But it's also possible to get in, unlike other enterprise software, you can get in with 1 or 2 users and get started sometimes and find a piece of the problem. So for example, if you sell, let me just give you the enterprise, like payroll as enterprise software. Well, if you're selling payroll software to a company like PTC, let's say, with 7,500 employees, you're not going to sell us payroll for 2 employees.
Right, yeah.
As far as I know, and I don't want to speak for PTC here, but for any big company, if you're selling payroll to I'm trying to pick just a random company.
To GE.
To GE, thank you. I'm selling payroll. It's probably generally an all or, you're selling it for a lot of people or none. So you can think of CAD and PDM as enterprise software and PLM, but sometimes it's not, because you can go in and you can say, look, we're selling to GE aircraft engine. Well, the aircraft engine is going to be made in whatever CAD system you're making, but try using us for prototyping that new fuel inlet system.
Yeah.
Okay. Or, use us for simulation of the EMF from some electronic system, or something like that. Use us for part of the problem, and they will bring new tools in.
Yeah.
And so as a champion, depending on the environment, sometimes you can bring in new tools and you can get in a piece of it. So you may look for a place as a startup to sell your engineering software, and we do this too, into a group. Engineering can sometimes be unified like an enterprise software, but sometimes it can be very fragmented. Acquisitions do that too. You acquire a company and they're using a certain kind of software.
Yeah.
And you see that. We have a great story. It's online about Sonos and their new soundbar, cool product you can relate to, a really great soundbar. And some of the key speaker tech was from an acquisition that they made in Europe. They acquired a company that makes a wild new speaker driver. Anyone interested, check it out on the web. Just Google search or anything search, ChatGPT search or Bing search, Sonos and Onshape, and you'll get the case study. And there's video and there's screen imagery of the CAD models, really cool.
Cool.
And that company stayed on Onshape, even though the whole soundbar was done in another CAD system. They stayed with Onshape for their CAD and, more importantly, their PDM. And they said, hey, this is what worked for us to get that product out the door.
That makes sense. And I guess like from that, what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is that decision makers could be basically anywhere, because it doesn't necessarily have to be this like enterprise decision, because it could be like the lead of the R&D team, or even like the project engineer that is basically responsible of delivering this small thing, and that could be your decision maker, and that could be your entrance, and they'll be your internal champions, and they'll be like, what, we switched to this, it's been the best thing ever, like you guys should consider it, and then they almost act as like implants as sales reps.
That's exactly what happens in all these markets, and it makes engineering software an interesting market. Every market. The other thing is every market's a little different.
Totally.
And just like in hardware.
Absolutely. So we talked about, we started with you being on the blackjack team.
We'll come back.
And you already kind of like mentioned how it influenced, I guess, your relationship with failure and how you think about it, which I think it's a very common thread amongst successful people, how they have a very healthy relationship with failure. There's even a book called Go for No. And it's like basically flipping the script and flipping the relationship with failure. So anyway, not to dwell on the failure part, but I really want to hear your thoughts on how Blackjack influenced that, and then any other way that it's influenced your business strategy and how you've carried yourself through the years.
Great lessons from Blackjack. So one about the failure point, what you learn is that the long run is longer than most people understand, you know? So like, and you see it in business all the time. Like, just to not to get too far along the line with Blackjack, but Blackjack gives you a statistical edge, meaning just like a regular casino has a statistical edge. You know, if you, as far as I know, you know, if you spin the roulette wheel, every spin, the casino, all the bets you could possibly place have odds that slightly favor the house. So mathematically, if you do it enough times, you'll lose all your money. Now in a short run, you might win. Card counting changes those odds, flips them around so that we have a small mathematical edge. But just as a regular player could win, everyone knows someone went to Vegas for a weekend and won. All card counters have gone to Vegas for a weekend and lost, you know, and so, you know, the odds can work against you. So what you learn is to be confident in your system, because it always sort of works out that although there's a lot of noise and you might go down for a while, over time, this is what happens in Blackjack. You just, you know, get into the profit zone. So I learned that the long run is longer than people understand. So you see it in business all the time. People will talk about people in the world of business and say, well, you know, Jane or Joe is a fantastic business thinker because they made this decision and look at the success they had. And I'm like, well, it could be that they're a fantastic thinker. It could be they got lucky.
True.
And the converse is also true. Well, Jane or Joe doesn't know what they're talking about. They said to invest all this money in this project and it failed. Well, it could be that Jane or Joe is thinking really correctly and just they lost a hand, but they're playing correctly. I'm always like, are they playing correctly? That's so that Blackjack taught me that. The other thing it taught me, very relevant to these stories, is that even when everybody says you can't do something, sometimes you can't. Like when I started with Blackjack, a lot of my friends would say, oh, that's not going to work. You know, like, what do you mean? Well, that can't work, or the casinos wouldn't allow it, or you know, my brother-in-law's dentist, auto mechanic, goes to Vegas all the time, and you know, he says that, you know, it's impossible, you know, like this hearsay evidence and stuff. And then I discovered, you know what, it works. So years later, when it's like, oh, you know, you can't put a CAD system, you know, in the cloud, you know, that'll never work. You know, it's like, well, why not? You know, I think it's going to work, you know. It's like, well, you know, it's like, sorry, industry, it works. But I learned to kind of ignore it. So those are some of I also learned a lot about systems and working as a team. So in order to win as a team at Blackjack, consistently and reliably, we took the systems and we systematized them so people could do them as a group. We quality controlled them so that we understood that you know, that we tried to minimize error rates. Something you talk about in one of your episodes, maybe the same one, about, you know, about finding error sources in manufacturing. And so we would do that in Blackjack. Hey, how do we train people so that error rates are reduced? And so those are some of the things, and working as a team, I really learned about that too. Yeah, working as a team toward a common goal intensively, you know, it was a startup environment. And so all those things come back to help as you go about your, you know, your career, you know, in the next chapter. So.
That's incredible. Actually, with that, I want to transition into some of the harder times, let's say. One of the segments that I like to have on the show is called Hardware Horror Stories, where we talk about basically the horrors of building hardware, in a sense. And in your case, it could be either regarding hardware horror story that you've experienced or you've heard of that our listeners could really take some lessons out of. For usually what we try to do is talk about what went wrong, how it was resolved, and the main lesson learned.
Hi, listeners. I hope that you're enjoying the episode. I just wanted to come back on here to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Onshape, the only cloud-native product development platform. And now you can apply to be a part of their Onshape startup program that essentially gives eligible hardware startups a free year of Onshape Professional. And you can apply now at onshape.pro/thebuildercircle. You can also find this link in the show notes. And now I leave you with the hardware horror story segment with Jon Hirschtick.
All right. Now we're going to enter into our hardware horror story segment. That's why we're in the fire zone, as you can see. And in this segment really is, I believe that a lot of success stories are talked about, but not a lot of failures are talked about. And I tried to normalize that through this segment in like a witty way, as you can see.
Yeah.
So
I actually have a saying about that.
Oh, yeah, please.
Like I say, like I think if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be living in a neighborhood where success and failure live near each other. And it's like most people see success and failure as opposite ends of a line, but I see it more like a giant like hoop earring or something, and success and failure like metastable states at the top.
Oh.
And near each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get it.
And they're both far from just averages of anything, you know? And so like, and you see that with entrepreneurs, like, you know, like Steve Jobs created the iPhone, and he also created the Next computer, you know? And so like, you know, and I'm not knocking Next, but, you know, a lot of people won't even know what that is.
Exactly.
And so I think that you get comfortable that failure's in the same neighborhood. And so it can be a little relaxing. Nonetheless, the imagery of fires and things not a neighborhood I want to be in. But anyway, so you want a story about that?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think of one that comes to mind is my old friend Carl Ulrich, who's kind of a famous guy, wrote Ulrich and Eppinger, Product Design and Development. Steve Eppinger, also a dear friend of mine. Great book, by the way. Textbook. But anyway, Carl told a story once of a product he built, a scooter, Zooter scooter, I think. And as I recall the story, the first Zooter scooter he built, he designed it really carefully, and he did a lot of focus groups and had some retailers really interested or something. And he's like, this is going to be perfect. And he optimized the manufacturing and like, I could have, you know, I'm going to hopefully get the details more or less right. The point will be right. Really optimized it. Might have gone to China or had outsourced manufacturer, and everything was all. And then he put it in stores and didn't sell.
Oh, okay.
You know? And I actually think I actually have seen products. I don't know that he sold zero, but very low. And I have seen products generalizing this that sell absolutely zero.
Wow.
Okay. So the biggest horror story, and then he tells the story of going back and iterating it. On the second one, he said, I'm going to sell these before I optimize them. So he made some at a loss, as I recall.
Oh, okay.
He manufactured them knowing that, hey, if I hit the design right, I'll be able to get the cost out. That I'll be able to do. But I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Again,
and I see this a lot in my customers. Like they're getting too far into the details of, you know, oh, I've got to outsource in China because the board told me to, and we're preparing for 1 million units. You know, how many are in use? Usage doesn't, well, no one's used it yet because we haven't made them yet. We'll go make some, and well, we'll lose money that way. Well, it's a small amount of money to lose. So Carl's idea, so the lesson was he designed it and overthought the manufacturing, didn't sell enough, and kind of regrouped and sold some at a loss. But got the design right, and that's, you know, so don't get too into all the details before you get testing. Principle of agile design, which coming from the software industry, coming to hardware. So that's one kind of general.
That's a great story.
Thinking, yeah.
I mean, it's like there's the common phrase, turn of phrase saying, if you launched something that you're not slightly embarrassed by, you waited too long.
Oh, I've heard that in the podcast. You said that in the podcast.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty good statement. Yeah. You are right. For most things.
Yeah.
I mean, some things are exception. If you're building a spacecraft,
right.
You know,
maybe not want to take that chance.
Like, you know, timely subject in the news, you know, maybe you don't want to take that chance. Or even an uncrewed spacecraft.
Yeah.
Even that, you know, there's, you know, it's very expensive if it doesn't work. So you want to be a little more
maybe less
simulate.
regulated spaces it's okay. But
Yeah, every problem's different. You have to make the
course.
right decisions, but there's a common error is to think you know more than you do about
Absolutely.
market acceptance.
Totally. Well, with that, we can certainly wrap up Hardware Horror Stories. That was great.
This episode and podcast are brought to you by my consulting company, Pratik Development, where every startup receives a tailored approach in transitioning their ideas or research to an innovative hardware product. I'm dedicated to helping with strategic execution, product development, scaling manufacturing, and optimizing supply chains to bring your vision to life. I believe that hardware should be accessible and successful, and that's the whole reason that the podcast exists. So if you value the podcast and you'd like the episodes and you appreciate the insights, please support us by sharing, rating, and leaving a review at your favorite podcast platform. Your engagement is crucial in helping us reach more visionaries like yourself. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of the community.
Okay. So going back into the ending portion of the podcast, before we get into our lightning round, I do want to ask you just a question. Is there a lesser known moment of the early days in Onshape or SolidWorks that changed everything that maybe wasn't covered by the press? Or
Sure, I can tell you a couple moments. With SolidWorks, one thing you may find interesting is we had a lot of trouble raising money, like a year.
Wow.
It took a long time, the bulk of a year, and it felt like it was taking forever. And I got turned down and rejected with the SolidWorks business plan over and over and over again by a lot of venture capitalists. So again, back to the lesson of blackjack, even when everyone says it's not going to work and it's not going to work. World doesn't need another CAD system. So that was a SolidWorks thing. And then for Onshape, one moment I can remember was we were so wondering about the feasibility. And one thing was the lack of 3D graphics in browsers. Like, we can't do that. And then WebGL came. Again, some people know what this is, some don't. If you don't, Google it, look it up. The technology that lets you access the GPU essentially from the browser. And when I saw that, it was like a lightning bolt. I'm like, that's the last piece. With that, we'll be able to, probably, and, we were really excited to see WebGL. I just didn't even know it was under development. And I found out about it almost randomly one day. I'm like, it's practically like running down, down the street, like, wow, this is amazing. This is so important. And other people are like, why is that so important? Oh, it's important. And I think it is and has been. So those are just a couple of little,
that's awesome.
Little stories along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really encouraging because how successful both companies have been, it's just like it sometimes isn't immediately obvious, and you really need to have like gumption and determination to see it forward, and you did, and it changed everything. So it's encouraging for a lot of people right now raising.
Well, it depends how the story ends, because
right.
It could be, it could be gumption and deterministic, and it could also be, a lot of people stick with ideas too long.
I completely agree with that.
It's hard to know. I say, I always say, another one of my sayings is, visions and hallucinations both look and feel the same until you try to realize them. But yeah, I think I also kept an eye on the right kinds of data that indicated along the way I was the right path. So yeah, lightning round, right? Lightning.
Yes, lightning round. So lightning round is basically just asking you between two things and like maybe your thoughts on it. We'll try to keep it snappy. But what are your thoughts on single source of truth versus best tool for the job? Single source of truth wherever possible, but don't be afraid to mix in best tool for the job, because sometimes it's worth it to break that perfectly smooth tool chain to have, because the tools are always changing. So sometimes you have to make that decision. So it's really optimal decisions rule. But generally, the more things you can get in a single source of truth, the better. Yeah. Okay. Okay, this is a new one. And you don't have to answer if but parametric modeling or direct modeling? Parametric modeling. All right. Okay. With direct tools added in, because it's pretty easy to add direct editing into parametric tools. That's what we do. So people think it's like this war, it's not war, it's both. I want to say both, but you're looking for an answer. And so to me, parametric environments can accommodate direct editing. Like, you can go in Onshape and you can really create models using direct editing tools. People don't realize how powerful they are. These features like move face, replace face, modify fillet, and you combined with
a set of tools we call Create Selection that give you really cool ways to select groups of geometry. So you could say, hey, I want to change all these holes. You know, you're able to do that even for a non-parametric part. A lot of people don't know we can do that. Oh yeah, we can do that. We can work with mesh models. People don't know we can do that. So because it's parametric foundation doesn't mean you can't have the beauty of direct editing. But if you go direct editing, pure direct editing, you don't have parametrics. I mean, it's kind of like asking, is a spreadsheet better with or without formulas? Well, I say, have the formulas, you don't always have to use them.
Yeah,
if you want to just type in the numbers, go ahead, and people do that. So that's my view, is parametric foundation with the direct. That's what we do at Onshape. That's what our customers seem to like, so.
I actually completely agree with that.
Okay, good.
Having designed parametric models and direct modeling, I've also broken a lot of models when doing just direct modeling. And it's really nice to have that parametric backbone so that you don't start from scratch. So I agree with that. Closed versus open APIs.
Open APIs. You know, I mean, you don't want to open every level.
Sure.
You know, like one day someone was saying, you need to be more like Amazon and have an open API. I'm like, we do have an open API. By the way, Onshape, a little word from our sponsor, my sponsor anyway, word from PTC about Onshape. We have, as far as I know, the industry's only total comprehensive RESTful API for doing CAD and PDM.
Cool.
You know, not, the CAD's on your local computer and there's some file storage or a few services. It's the whole system is a REST API. Think about how our system works. So that's really good. But someone said to me, well, we need to be like Amazon. Well, even Amazon goes down to a level, but like you don't get access. There's no API for changing the microcode on the Amazon CPUs. So, you know, you want to sensibly draw a line somewhere.
Totally.
But open APIs, we're very open. PTC is really open about partnering. We love partnering. We're not trying to do everything ourselves. We partner with people, even compete with some of our other products. We do that across the board, you know.
Very cool.
Our Arena product, they'll work with SolidWorks is the CAD system. You know, we'll work with other PLM systems. You know, we do what's right. The key thing here is set your course by what adds value to the customer, and that's open APIs.
Nice.
Definitely.
Yeah, I completely
really
agree with
open on
that. I love that.
Sorry, that wasn't exactly lightning.
Oh, it's all right. I mean, it's like all of these answers are so valuable, and I was hoping to extract value from them as well.
Well,
So that
try
it
and
works
give
for
you a
me.
direct answer right away.
No, it's okay. For version control, Git style or manual?
Git style. Come on, you knew that. You knew that was
I knew it.
that was a
I just needed to hear
fastball.
it.
That was a hanging curve down the middle. Oh, not everyone knows what that means. That was an easy. It's like a kick into an open goal.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Git style.
I got to give you one.
What's fascinating is that is worded. Excuse me for saying it, but that's worded sort of in the legacy generation way of thinking, because the new generation coming up would not know there is any other way than Git style.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and then some people are listening to this and going, what's Git style? You know, well, check us out at Onshape and you'll never go back, you know.
I agree.
But yeah, Git style, that's an easy one. No equivocation.
CAD first or simulation first design?
Well, I think you have to have a CAD model in order to simulate
something,
it.
like-
So I think CAD is the system of record that holds it. That's a little self-serving, but simulation's super important. But you can't simulate something until you've modeled it, Jen.
Yeah.
So you got to model it and then simulate it.
There's
and,
always,
you know.
it's about, I think, just like finding that balance of like, if you have too much details and the simulation takes too long, and it's like, what do you want, fidelity, or do you want, like, it's like, do you want quality, or do you want time on your side?
Yeah, but we should do a better job as a whole industry making these tools work well together.
100%.
And simulation is growing like crazy, and we love simulation. Users are doing more of it. We provide some simulation. We work with great simulation partners, you know, whether it's ANSYS or SimScale. I don't know, SimScale gaining a lot of traction, fantastic tool. Some of the new AI physics simulation tools are awesome. Neural Concept, Physics X, SimScale has those. You know, I'm just trying to pick a lot of people, but all great stuff. We love working with all of them, and go simulation, but you gotta have CAD as the system of record.
Absolutely.
And it's PDM too. It's not just CAD. You have to manage the data as well.
Absolutely. Digital twins, overhyped or the inevitable standard?
Well, I think I'm going to say overhyped, because of course we have digital twins, but everyone's idea of what a digital twin is very fluid.
Totally.
And so like NVIDIA is saying we have a digital twin. Well, it is in some ways. In some ways, CAD is a digital twin. Simulation is a digital twin. IoT can be considered a digital twin. So PTC creates real digital twins, and we can call that, but you can call almost anything you want if it captures digitally a high fidelity view. And I know some people would define it differently. I'm just saying layman. So I think it's a little overhyped and overgeneralized, even though there's truth to the matter. It's such a malleable truth that almost fits anything. So it doesn't really mean, it's more of a philosophy or concept than it is a hard tech.
Totally.
And so I think it's more of a buzzword when it comes to tech.
I agree with that.
Okay.
And then last one, build in public or stealth?
I think I'll take build in public because I think the common error, now that's not universal.
Sure.
I'm going to answer that. And you didn't, this is not one I knew you were going to ask. So,
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. It's okay. The
curveball.
reason I say build in public is I always think there's a common error people make. Like the common error with engineering schedules is there's not a bell curve distribution of late versus early. They're mostly late.
Yeah, that's true.
So the common error in public versus stealth is to stay stealth too long. That's why I say build in public. Doesn't mean everyone should on day one expose everything.
Yeah.
But generally people keep things too
close to
they're
the chest.
too worried about someone stealing the idea, and probably someone else already has the idea anyway.
Right, it's true. 10
10
people probably have the idea. It's about who executes.
Like the stuff I did, SolidWorks Onshape, pretty obvious ideas, really.
True, yeah.
What I'll take credit for is what you talked about earlier, the persistence to actually go and do it. But the idea wasn't so novel.
Totally.
Pretty obvious. You have to get your ideas out there in the sunshine a little bit to learn, because your big risk in a startup is often market acceptance or the problem you didn't think about. We've come back to that in several different ways in this talk, and I'm sure you see it in your practice. And so it's really hard to flesh out all those problems by operating your own four walls black box.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I would say build more publicly.
I love that. I actually really appreciate that. And so we're going into our full close now, and I want to end with maybe two questions that are going to be really critical for our listeners.
Okay.
One, which is the single most important advice you would give someone that's working on a software for hardware company.
Single most important advice is get out there and understand the use cases of people who will pay for your software in detail, which is not necessarily your friend or a quick review, or the students at school, or you in your workshop, unless that's the intended audience.
Right.
People build products. So whole companies now building things for FIRST Robotics. Those are great businesses. But I mean, generally you're talking about, if your product is for people who build industrial robots, go talk to people who build industrial robots.
Yeah.
Feel their pain and really immerse yourself into use cases. That's advice one. Advice two, be realistic about the size of your market. When I say be realistic, it's not to say there's nothing wrong with any size market as long as your business suits. It's like getting the right power supply for your product. Make sure that the right capital, business, and market expectations align, and usage. Measure, watch the usage. Those are the things I'd advise.
I think that's super sound. And last question is, 3 types of software every hardware team should absolutely have. I can think of one that you're going to say.
CAD, we think, well, it's true. Do you know a hardware team that doesn't use CAD,
Oh, so, yeah, of course. That would be.
So that's one. PDM. So many customers come to us for PDM, and you might say, well, not everyone has PDM. Well, everyone has some form of PDM. They're either using folders, like the old network drive, and everything's fine till it's not.
Sure.
Well, we just decide who's working on which files until everyone worked in the same files, and it's hopeless. By the way, that typically happens when it's crunch time, at the worst possible moment, when you need people working. So CAD number one, PDM number two. If you get Onshape, you get both. Okay, CAD, PDM, and I'd say the third one is some form of threaded discussion tool like Slack or Teams. That's mandatory these days. You can't work by email.
Do you have any preference on project management software?
Anyone that you'll use.
Like any system
anything. You'll use.
Yeah.
Again, usage doesn't lie. Like if you find a project management tool and you're using it, it's probably a good one. You know, the worst thing is to say, well, this one's going to be a whole lot better. And then you try to use it and it doesn't stick. You know, so different people, a lot of people use essentially Jira as project management. I think that's great. And it's picking up in hardware companies. We're seeing a lot of growth in requirements management. Not exactly project management, but a form of it, which is surprising to me because I wasn't so aware of that. But we have this product called Codebeamer that is doing very well. And I encourage people in regulated industries, you know, things where human safety is involved or other highly regulated or super complex industries, often the same thing, you know, self-driving cars, things like that. Requirements management is a big field, and, you know, Codebeamer, there's other products. I'm just saying, like, that's out there. But yeah, finding systems that work for project management. We use a lot of software, you know, as a software developer. But yeah, that's it. But the threaded discussion, it's really important. I think these days, anyone in the new generation listening to this would say, well, of course, everyone uses Slack. And the old generation is thinking, well, we use email. Why would I want Slack? You know, well, the answer is, you know, like, you know, get away from, if your digital tool resembles a paper-based workflow, it's probably too slow, and email does.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, get your Slack or Teams. Slack and Teams, both good. Discord is another one out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jon. That was a absolutely jam-packed episode with so many insights and just stuff that people probably have been wondering for years.
Well,
so
some people maybe.
I think a lot of people. I mean, we all religiously have used softwares that you've created. So thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor to.
Well, thank you. Excellent questions. Excellent interview. And keep doing great things for your clients, you know, because I know you are. And I really, and this is great that you're doing this. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Woo!
That's it. All right. All good. All right.
The opinions and information shared on this podcast are for informational purposes only. We always recommend that you seek professional advice before taking any action related to your business or personal ventures.